to say something next about the question of notation of vowels, because this is an issue that often worries people. One of the tiresome things from the point of view of the phonetics consumer is that different dictionaries, different textbooks, different scholars have made use of rather different notations for English phonetics over the years, and in particular, different notations for the vowels. It really is not the case that some notations are more scientific or more accurate than others. It's a question of what you choose to make explicit in your notation and what you choose to make conventionally not symbolized but to be interpreted by the user. We clearly need to distinguish each vowel phoneme from each other vowel phoneme, and on that everybody is agreed, there's no problem. But one big question is, do we symbolize vowel length? And if we do, is that a sufficient way of showing the difference between the vowels of green and grin, sheep and ship, and other similar pairs? And many older books make use of this quantitative notation, where you can see the length marks are sufficient to indicate the difference sheep, ship, or on our handout, read, rid. This is the notation used by Daniel Jones in his Outline of English Phonetics and the first 12 editions of English Pronouncing Dictionary, the ones that Jones himself was responsible for. We are led to believe that Jones himself became very dissatisfied with this notation, but his publishers would not let him change it. Why was he dissatisfied? Well, because native speakers in general are dissatisfied with this notation. We are so aware of the quality difference between the E of sheep and the E of ship, E, that it seems ludicrous not to symbolize this with distinct phonetic symbols. Hence, many people from the 1930s onwards, native speakers particularly, were using this qualitative notation, where we use not length marks, but separate symbol shapes to indicate the difference between E, and so on. This is what's used in the American tradition. Americans tend to refer to this as IPA notation, as if it was the only possible IPA notation. The tradition of American Speech, the journal, and the Kenyon and Knott American Pronunciation Dictionary. They often also symbolize the diphthongs A and O by single letters, the letter E and the letter O. Since they're using the letter E for that, they have to use a different symbol for the address. Well, when I was first on the staff at University College London Phonetics, we had to operate with both of those systems depending on which classes we were teaching. And our then Professor, Head of Department, Gimson, decided to attempt to bring these two traditions together by a kind of compromised notation, which is the basis of the one we currently use. And in Gimson's notation, you symbolize length explicitly, but you also use different symbol shapes to indicate the different qualities. So this is both quantitative and qualitative. And since Gimson introduced that notation in the first edition of his Introduction to the Pronunciation of English, really almost everybody has fallen into line. All dictionaries and textbooks published in Britain for the last 25 years have used this notation or a slight variant of it. Nevertheless, there is a kind of lag, which means that in many foreign countries there are still books being published using this kind of notation. Well, there are generally agree that this is the best kind of notation, you can see that it is in a sense redundant because you do indicate the same information twice. You use length marks in read, lack of length marks in read. You use one symbol, or letter I, for the vowel E in read, different symbols, small gap I, for the A of read. This redundancy has its advantages. If your eyesight is poor, it's perhaps a good thing to show something twice rather than just once. But on the other hand, it also freed up certain further symbols which we have since exploited. Now, we'll discuss these in a different lecture, the lecture about weak vowels. But I just mentioned now that this is why we can now write the vowel in happy, at the end of happy, in a way that is different, both from the symbol we use for sheep and the symbol we use for ship. Well, you think that was enough of that, but no. The most recent edition of the concise Oxford Dictionary, and now another pronunciation dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary of Pronunciation, have introduced yet another notation system. Now, let me say that there are many authors, such as me, who might have felt it would be nice to alter Gimson's notation in some minor way, but Vallefogett, Roach, and I, and many other authors, nevertheless feel the obligation of discipline not to confuse learners by constantly changing things, but to use the same notation that the others are doing. I don't like the symbol for O, for example, but nevertheless, I live with it. Well, Upton didn't feel any such obligation, and he's introduced this notation where the green symbols are the ones in which he differs from everybody else.